All right, so I think we're live now. Let me share this out on YouTube. Actually, let me share it out on Twitter. So let's see. Awesome. So today, let me have the heater on, so I need to turn that down a little bit. How is my sound? I want to do a sound check. I know I did one of these before, and the sound just wasn't very awesome. So give me a thumbs up if we've got good sound here. Actually, and as we're bringing in questions, ask any questions. I wanted to start off with an article. I just put it here in the comment section or chat section, talking about the role of the data engineer is changing. So I thought this was a pretty interesting article. The article talks about the role of the data engineer and kind of where it's transformed, and it's something I've kind of been talking about and really looking at for the last year. But this is more keyed towards the data engineer in the startup arena, and so this is definitely has a bias and an audience of this is what a data engineer does for startups. So really interesting as far as some of the tips and some of the things, but this is really keying towards, hiring managers, IT, data science teams in the startup arena. So some of the key points here, and one of the things that, we've talked about a little bit is like, okay, what are some of the differences between a data engineer that does maybe administrative work and think about, scaling, building out your systems versus somebody who's a developer. And then this one kind of digs into like the developer. So really one of the things that they talk about is, all right, so there's a quote here saying, the way that I think about this shift is the change in the data engineer's role in the team. It's gone from a builder of the infrastructure and supporting the broader data team role. It's actually a pretty huge shift and one that some data engineers aren't always excited about. So it says they need to hire data engineers who are excited about building tools for the data analytics team. With that being said, there's another portion in here where they really talk about engineers shouldn't write ETL. And so it's actually built off of a post and quoted from 2016 where Jeff, I'm going to say this wrong, Munson wrote a foundational post talking about ETL. I find it kind of interesting because I think that ETL has kind of been a staple for it. And it's never fun, right? Like it's something you start off doing. Like I started off writing, ETL scripts, and I won't say like I wasn't building like big infrastructure systems, but I understand the frailty of those. But there's a lot of talk around here about, three tools that are really empowering data science, data analysts to be able to go through and use these tools to do ETL versus having to write some kind of custom script. Once again, with this one being more talked about for startups, I understand, because even in this article they quote around ETL, they're like, okay, well, if you're talking about petabytes and petabytes or like, very, very hot data that's coming in, then yeah, you do have to write ETL, right? So it's one of those things I've talked about a long time. I don't think that we'll ever cure the need for ETL. Maybe someday, maybe if we get into, unsupervised training and learning, with deep learning and machine learning, maybe that's a case. But I will say the tools probably have improved. Like the three tools that they talk about in here makes me really want to research and kind of look into with Stitch, Fivetran, and DBT. So if anybody's used those tools or heard about them, put it in the comment section here below. I'm kind of interested because, like I said, going through this, I hadn't really seen these before, and so I'm just kind of interested around kind of what they're doing from that perspective. So, but what does all this mean? Oh, before I jump into what I think about it too, here's another cool point. Once again, this is for hiring managers, people that are staffing for their startup around where they need to scale and when they need to bring in a data engineer. And so there's like 4 scale points. It says, so consider hiring your first data engineer. We have 3 data analysts / data scientists on your team. Consider hiring your first data engineer when you have 50 active users on your BI platform. Man, 50, I would think it maybe a little bit sooner, but maybe not. So you consider hiring your first data engineer when the biggest table in your warehouse hits 1 billion rows. So I don't know, man, maybe a little bit sooner, but we're talking about startups here and trying to scale, maybe bootstrap. So the last scale point, so consider hiring your data engineer when you need to build 3 or more custom data ingestion pipelines over the next few quarters, and they're all mission critical. And a lot of caveats around that one. So, but I think this is a very interesting article. Where I think it means the most to me, and kind of really where I see it, is where they talk a little bit more about the infrastructure piece. So, we've talked about a lot, like building the Hadoop systems, or other platforms, and being able to scale that up, and how it's a unique role. And then we have our data engineers that are focused on administration here, and then we have like data developers that are focused on like Spark and Flink, or MapReduce jobs, and kind of where that drawing line is. I think what this is really, when they're saying getting away from less of the infrastructure and having to do some of those day-to-day tasks, I think that's what that's saying, is that our traditional operations, so like our systems administrators, our storage admins, in those roles, like data analytics is mainstream, right? It's in the enterprise, and it's something that everybody that's supporting these systems need to have somebody that can do that. So maybe it's a focus more on the operation side, right? Like, I'm not building out a team for just on the data, on my data science team, where I've got my administrator, and I've got my developer, I've got my analyst, and I've got my data scientist, and maybe even visualization person. Like, maybe that can be supported from our traditional IT operations side. Doesn't mean that the data engineer is going away. It's just saying that maybe that person is somebody that's already in the organization, or more flipping onto the operational side, right? Like, you want, you have people that can support virtualization in your environment, right? You have those different people in those different roles and operations. Why not have it on that side too? So I think it's definitely very interesting, and definitely something I've kind of been looking at. And honestly, as we start looking at it, and one of the things that I haven't done as well on this channel with talking about is kind of the shift around, okay, we talked about Hadoop, and how to scale that and how to build that up in virtual environments, or how to do it in bare metal. But really, I mean, what are we doing around containers and Kubernetes, and all those different pieces there too? And so you're seeing a huge shift with Cloudera, Hortonworks, and even Azure and AWS using those. So that's kind of that shift and that focus. Maybe that's something we'll look at as on this channel, and start really talking about from the data engineer role, and how how containers and those other aspects are changing that, right? Because does it take less time off the administrator, right? Your systems operation, or your IT operations people, like if you're using containers, and does that give your developer a little bit more of a chance role too? So maybe you don't have to have somebody supporting it, 24/7. So I don't know, just I thought it was a really interesting article, and just definitely wanted to share it. Man, definitely want to reach out to actually want to reach out to some of the people here, maybe get them on the channel too. I think that would be good. So what's everybody working on? Any questions or anything like that? No, this is my I think it's only my second time doing one of these around lunchtime on a Sunday. So I don't know if this is a great time or not, but just let me know if you're watching this after the fact. Make sure, I'm still looking for some good times to really, really lock down and, have a live session and be able to answer as many questions. So as we're going through that, I'm going to look through some of the questions that I've gotten over the last couple of days. And so some questions around LinkedIn help. So I've got a video coming out here soon talking about how to build out, your LinkedIn profile for data engineering specific. And if you don't have project experience, what can you do? And so I've got some of those things coming. And then tomorrow I should have another video that'll go live that talks about this concept of, how do you learn these new technologies and these new topics, in a quick fashion. And so I'll go through and kind of just show a strategy that I've used over the last few years. Actually, probably, man, I'm getting old, but actually over the last 10 years or so, for just learning new topics. So it's something I used when I was a web developer, and then as I got into data engineering, it's something that I've kind of used. So, any questions, or is there anything that I can help with today? Just make sure you throw them in the chat here below, and then if my sound's not good, let me know, or if my sound's good, give me a thumbs up. So, really want to make sure that we don't have any issues like we did last time. So let me check, see what we've got here on Twitter. Any big data, big questions there. So, so I've got another question that came in toward the end of the last session where we were talking about HDFS and Java. And the question was, all right, do you have to use HDF? Do you have to know Java to do HDFS? And it's kind of a similar question to some of the things that we've talked about around, do you use Spark? Do you have to have Java experience to do Spark or MapReduce or Hadoop? And the answer on those is, been mostly no, right? There's APIs for Python. There's APIs, for Scala, however I say it wrong sometimes. But so you have those APIs, but from an HDFS perspective, so that goes back to what we were talking about, the administrator. No, like there's no depends on that. I've got, I'll show you some code. I've got some courses out there that show how to navigate the HDFS command line. In none of those courses do we really do anything from Java. I do show some how to, kick off pig jobs, hive jobs, HBase, and those underlying are written in Java. Same thing with Hadoop, but there's no need for Java from that perspective. And so you can feel comfortable if you don't have a programming background, even being able to navigate and start learning some things with HDFS. So that was an easy question that kind of came in, and thankful for that question. And then let's see, I've got some other topics that I'm going to start going through over the next few months, just around, like I said, it kind of went on a journey last year with learning deep learning, TensorFlow, and kind of going through in that world. And so I want to bring back, so I've got a course that should be coming out, but I want to bring back like a data engineer's approach to what do you need to know for machine learning and TensorFlow, and kind of how does all this kind of come together. And so I had a question come in. Let me go to the community section here, but I had some questions come in this week around, all right, so like, what are some of the reasons that you're going into deep learning? Like, why did I take a data science course, the machine engineering, machine learning course, and then why am I doing a deep learning course right now? And so I'll just say, like, there's three big topic areas that I'm looking forward to this year for from a machine learning and a data engineering approach. And one of them is the continuation of deep learning. And so really, I'm kind of curious. I still don't think that you have to learn algorithms and know those aspects of the deep math for these projects as a data engineer. But I'm really curious about like where we're going from being able to bridge the gap between what's going on in the Hadoop ecosystem to what's going on with TensorFlow or PyTorch or Caffe. And so I kind of want to be ahead of the curve on that. So there's projects out there. You've heard me talk about Project Hydrogen. There's an NVIDIA released Rapids, so ability to do ETL, which we just talked about, maybe, some ETL tools and kind of this article's approach to it. And then Submarine too. So the Hadoop ecosystem, they've got one coming out around Submarine. I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't understand the intricacies of it. I haven't got hands-on with it as much as I've kind of followed Project Hydrogen. But there's a lot of tools and a lot of things that are being open to be able to give you that ability to access TensorFlow, access Caffe, all from your Hadoop ecosystem. So whether it be from Spark or whether it be from Hadoop or maybe even MapReduce. So that's kind of one of the reasons that I've gone into it. And then two, just to maybe have a more of appreciation. So like I said before, when I worked on some projects, I understood like one or two algorithms that we used, not understand it enough to recommend it. And I'm still not in that boat, and I still don't plan on going down that boat. So I'm still, in the data engineering ecosystem, IT operations. I love that side of it, but just starting to learn a little bit more around data science and specifically around machine learning engineer. Because like I said, I started off this video talking about, the focus and the change in that role. And so I'm kind of curious, I want to stay ahead and I want to understand some of the things because I think there's still going to be a blend over. Goes back to, the organization and the role that you're in around how much will you do just as a data engineer or how much will you do as a data scientist? Like there's always some overlap there. And so going through some of these courses has, helped me help kind of bridge the gap. And like I said, the course I've got coming out around TensorFlow, my whole approach is like, hey, I'm a data engineer. I went in and started learning TensorFlow, started learning, how to run some of these jobs. And so like, I want to take it back for other data engineers that are curious or, want to get more into the machine learning, deep learning side of data analytics. Hey, this is my approach. This is how I learn it. This is coming from the Hadoop world and the data engineering role. This is how I see starting your first TensorFlow job, right? And some of the other things. So if there's not any more questions or anything, I will cut today's session short and we'll catch back up. Like I said, really want to focus in on finding some times that these live sessions are going to be beneficial for everybody and have everybody on. So throw it in the comment section here below or put it in the chat window around some good times and good approaches. And I will see you again on Big Data, Big Question live session. So.